Thank you everyone for joining our Training Tuesday class. We really moved from the early portion of March, not having very many clients in, to coming in now and having everyone join us every Tuesday, and we really appreciate it. This is going to be the last class of October, and with that being said, with every month, Jonathan is going to do a drawing, post a video onto our YouTube channel, and give away a Google Home device. That's to show a little bit of appreciation for everyone joining our class, participating, and being a part of what we've tried to create here. Next month, we're going to have one class only. We're going to be able to touch on a little bit of National Guard products, but after that, we're going to allow everyone to take it easy, enjoy the holidays, and get a break from us doing these trainings every single week, and trying to get you all to join in. So with that being said, I'm going to introduce you guys to Mathias Schwering. He works with Keyscan. He's a part of the Dormacaba group, and he's going to teach us today about Keyscan and Aurora, and a little bit about access control. So I'm not going to take up too much time. I'm going to allow him to speak for a little bit and then take over the presentation. So with that, Mathias, you want to go ahead?
Sure, thanks, Justin. So as Justin was saying there, my name is Mathias. You should just go by Matt. And as he said, I'll be going through some of the Keyscan system there. So I'll talk about Aurora, and I'll talk about the Luna system as well. So we have those two different platforms there. So I'll talk. Most of the focus, I think, will probably be on Aurora, just because it's a lot larger and more complex, I guess. But I'll touch a little bit on Luna, so what that system offers, and I'll be going into both of the software platforms as well, so you get to see what both of those look like there. So with that, I'll dive in on these couple of PowerPoints I've got here to just kind of talk about the solutions and the different components related to these. So just get started here. First, a little bit about the Aurora specifically. So with Aurora, the standard software actually comes with active mapping. So basically a graphical interface that you can interact with your devices of the system with. It comes with photo ID, so you can actually do photo badging right out of the box, along with visitor management. So a lot of nice, handy tools that a lot of other systems actually have as extra modules that you would have to purchase. It is a SQL 2012 Express engine, so has a 10 gig database capacity, but that can be upgraded to a full instance of SQL 2012 as well. So all data changes are automatically uploaded to controllers. So as soon as you make a change in the software, that automatically is transmitted down to the controllers for basically that live interaction with the devices there. Aurora is also a more people-centric instead of a credential-centric database. So when you're actually managing the database itself, it has that more person-centric information as opposed to that credential-centric. So, and one of the interesting things around that means you can actually have multiple credentials associated with a single profile. So instead of, for example, having, if you had two different badges, so one's like a mobile credential, one's a physical card, maybe you have a PIN number as well that's not related to either of those credentials. In other systems, that would actually mean that you would have John Smith, as an example, in there 3 different times, one for each of those credentials. In Aurora, it's, as I said there, it's a people-centric database. So we would have John Smith once, and his 3 different credentials associated with his profile under that kind of profile. It's also quite flexible in regards to the access levels. So you can actually have 10 group access levels associated with an individual credential. So for example, again, with those 2 or 3 different credentials could have up to 10 group assignments. So very flexible with the permissions as well. There's no annual licensing or annual fees. So with Aurora specifically, you buy the license, so you buy the software. If you're adding on an extra license module, so for example, if you're adding on web capacity or doing an integration, you're paying for that integration function once. And now that is unlocked within the database, and you don't have to worry about renewing those licenses. Aurora supports an unlimited number of readers and panels per site. Unlimited number of readers and panels, and there's an unlimited number of sites as well. There's no extra licensing for adding devices. So basically, when you purchase Aurora, you can expand to the system as much as you want, and there's no caps to say, oh, you've hit the cap in the Aurora basic capacity. Now you have to unlock the next level of Aurora. So there's no limit there. So it's fully scalable from a single door and a single controller to thousands of doors and readers and controllers in the system. One other point there's a support for multiple concurrent card formats. So what that kind of means is that out of the box, we're kind of setting our controllers for our Keyscan 36-bit format, but we support basically, you can have 26-bit, so your kind of generic industry standard 26-bit, and the Keyscan 36-bit at the same time, or be using like the corporate 1000 in there as well. So there's a ton of different combinations. I think we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 different credential technology formats. So as I mentioned there, so the Aurora database is a SQL 2012 Express, and we basically have the software broken into components. So there's the database engine itself, which is where it's kind of the central repository for information. So when you make a change to the system, if you add new information, that's all getting downloaded or sent to the database, which then relays through our communication service to send information down to the controller. So for example, if you add a new person along with a new credential, that information gets stored. You're making that change from the client interface, which could be on one machine. That's then sending it to the database and storing it there, which then relays that out to a communication service. So in a small system, all of those three different components might be on one PC or a small server. But as your system might grow, so if you have 30, 40, 50 panels, all of a sudden that's a lot more devices that you're talking to, and you can scale that system up to having it on different computers. So you could have a database running on a server. You could have a communication service that's running on, for example, maybe a virtualized server or just another physical machine. And then you could have multiple client workstations as well. So for example, you could have a client application installed on the database location, but then any number of administrators, instead of having to remote into that server, they can actually just have the application on their workstation, and then they're doing their work right there, which streamlines a lot of connections here. So the different controllers with the Aurora, so we're different hardware here. We have a CA150, which is our single door controller. This is actually one of the nice things there is that's a PoE device, so it's power over Ethernet. All of our other controllers don't support PoE, so that's the only one that does the PoE there. The other controllers that we have is the CA250, so the 2-reader or 2-door controller, the CA4500, so 4-reader, 8500 for the 8-reader, and then we have 2 elevator controllers, the EC1500 and EC2500. The difference between the 2 elevator controllers there is a single cab versus a dual cab. The single cab can actually support up to 40 floors, whereas the dual cab controller only supports up to 16 floors. So here's a couple of common components about for a typical door access control system here. So you can see here, we'd have the software running on a computer. You'd have your controller, so your hardware with communications, and that's talking back and forth between the software and the hardware. And then all of your end-of-line devices are connecting back into that hardware. So you can have a electronic locking device, such as a door strike, as illustrated here. Card reader, you might have a door contact. It might be a little bit tricky to see that line coming up there, but there's a little magnetic door contact there. And in this example, we actually have a request exit as well. So a little motion sensor matches at the top of the door. So those are your typical components for control. And one of the nice things actually is with Dormicaba is that we actually offer basically all of the components that you would need. So through Keyscan, we have your access control hardware and software, your readers and your credentials. And through our RCI channel, we actually have request exit devices, door contacts, electronic locking devices, so strikes or mag locks, electrified cylinders, handsets, things like that. So a lot of different things we got there. So some of the key features about our control panels is that all of the door parameters are actually preset. So when you install the software and you go add a controller to the software, everything's basically already set. You don't need to say, yes, this relay is connected with this reader port or anything like that, or have the timer set. Everything is already set, so out of the box. It's just a matter of customizing. If you have a two-door controller and you're readdressing the reader ports to, for example, tie back to one door, then that can be configured. But basically, all the settings you would need to do are already set. In fact, for example, if you're not even using a credential, it's just a matter of having an RTE device unlock a door. The I/O is already configured in that manner. So if you're kind of getting your hardware all set up, but your software is taking a little bit of time to get that part configured, so you've got a couple of technicians on site, it actually makes things kind of interesting that you can have a semi-functional door without even having the software ready to go yet. So a lot of stuff there. The controllers also have dual processors, so that basically ensures that the full panel is operational at all times, so there's no downtime, even if there's a partial panel failure. All of the configurations necessary for operation is actually held in the controller. So the operation is actually independent of the server. So if your server goes offline, your card access, schedules, everything like that is continuing to operate because all of that information is held in the controller. Multi-threaded controller communication. So what that means is basically some systems only are able to talk to a single controller at a time. With our multi-threaded controller communications, that basically allows us to communicate to multiple panels across multiple data threads at the same time. So speeds up communication significantly. So it gives you a lot faster communication there. The controllers also store the last 6,000 transaction events. So that's access granted, access denied events, door forced events, any kind of those hardware events that take place at the controller. Those will actually be stored, last 6,000 will be stored in the controller if that connection to the database is lost. If the connection is still established, basically you're getting your real-time event notifications here. The controllers also support a disaster recovery capacity. So because all of that information for configuration is held in the controllers, so it knows its functions, we can actually pull that information in a limited capacity back into a database if the database was ever lost. So if you had a full system failure or server failure, I'll say it that way, where you had lost the hard drives, there's no backups anywhere, which is terrible. You should always have your backups. We have that ability to pull that disaster, actually pull your schedules, your schedule information back, your door configurations, credentials, all of that information. But the naming of things could be a little bit off in comparison to what it was before, because we're really only storing like initials in relation to people. So for example, if there's a John Smith in the database, when we store this credential in the controller, we'll only store JS. So if there's like a John Smith and I don't know, what else could be a JS? Like a Jordan Smith. Sorry, can't think of another last name with an S. But yeah, so if you had a John Smith and a Jordan Smith, they would both show with initials JS. So you will have to then spend the time to basically repopulate the database with that information to say, okay, this is John Smith, that's Jordan Smith, but at least get you up and running again from a complete server failure. And one of the other nice things is that all of our controllers are 100% in-house tested. So a little bit more information about the controller. So as I said, the CA150 is a single door controller. It's PoE, and there's up to 680 milliamps available for all of the devices. So there's actually a Form C relay on board. There's two. So you can actually switch those from a Form C to a powered output at 12 volts specifically. But there's also the power available for the reader, request exit devices, or auxiliary devices. So there's a fair bit of power in there just in the onboard that allows you to potentially deploy that without the use of a separate power supply, which is quite a pretty neat system there. All of our other controllers, they're not providing any power through the relays, so they're all strictly Form C. But there's basically all, on the two-door controller, you have all the required inputs for two doors. So you have two reader inputs, two door contact inputs, two request to exit inputs. There happens to be also 8 auxiliary inputs. So for extra functions, if you're tying in status there. And with the two-door controller, that comes with one DPS-15. So that's our dual power supply that provides power into the control board, and a single OCB8. So that's our relay output module. So there's basically 8 outputs that are available there. So again, 2 for your door output. For example, 2 could be used for accessibility or door operator, and then basically 4 auxiliary outputs there. The other controllers follow the same kind of template. So it's for the CA4500, it's a 4-reader or 4-door controller. So you have all the required inputs and outputs for 4 doors. The nice thing with the 4500 here is that you can actually expand the number of outputs. So out of the box, it has the single OCB8 for your 4 doors and 4 auxiliary outputs. But you can add in up to 4 auxiliary modules, different functions as well. So basically extra outputs. CA8500, same thing. So 8 door, 8 readers, all of your inputs and outputs for that. It actually comes with 2 OCB8s. The first one for your first 8 doors, the second one for your 8 auxiliary outputs, and then you can add on additional auxiliary outputs. The EC1500, so this is our single door, single cab controller. It supports up to 40 floors, and we actually have the floor tracking capacity on that as well. That does require an extra pair of wires per floor. That does get missed sometimes when people are looking to implement the floor tracking. So it is important to note that if you want to do floor tracking, so when you present a card, you get your floor selection available through the relay outputs. But if you then want to see what floor that the person has selected, then you have to have that extra pair of wires coming back to the controller there. Out of the box, the EC1500 only comes with a single OCB8 for the first 8 floors. So if you're expanding up to the 40 floors, you need the extra OCB8s. The EC2500, so that's the 2 cab. Out of the box, it comes with 2 OCB8s, one for basically for the first 8 floors of each cab. And then you can expand that with up to an additional 2 OCB8s for up to 16 floors in total. So just very quickly, I'll talk about some of the other components here. So we have the controller support serial communication and network communication using our Netcom 2P or Netcom 6P for encrypted connections, but that tends to be a little bit more complicated. So generally, it's our Netcom 2P that you would use on the controllers. And we also have, actually, sorry, so I'll switch the slide there. So this is our Netcom 2P. So as I said there, it's the Ethernet adapter. This can actually plug on directly to the controller, making it a network device right there. However, we also have another module, which is the SIM, that allows you to chain your panels. So you can actually have a series of panels sharing that one IP address. Here we go. So here's the SIM, or Communication Interlink Module. This uses a CAN bus protocol, so basically a modified version of RS-485 style bus, and it uses two twisted pair, or like a Cat5 between panels. But then your netcom can mount directly onto this, so you can actually have Cat5 coming in, which is going to the server, and then a Cat5 going out, which is daisy chaining down the line to other controllers, also with a SIM. So if you're using the SIM, you'll have one of these at each controller, but then only the first one in line would need a COM2P. So with the SIM here, it basically has two channels. One is for the database communication, and then one is a panel-to-panels communication, or what we call global communication. So this basically allows you to do triggering from one panel to another. So let's say, for example, if you had a alarm trigger go off at one panel, and you want all of the other panels to do something, that would require SIMs to basically broadcast that message to the other controllers. So here we have basically just an illustration of that. So we have controller 1, so ACU 1, with SIM 0. So you can actually see this one has or it might be a little bit tricky to see. You can see there's a netcom on this one. ACU 2, which just has a SIM. There's no netcom on this one. And then ACUs further down the line, again, just has another SIM to go further. We also have a SIM link, which is for kind of special applications. So generally, it's the SIM, that's the actual part number, is SIM. For most applications there, but there's that SIM link for additional applications. Basically, it just bridges over the network. So instead of a straight connection from one panel to another, the SIM link acts as a bridge. So there's actually a paired unit. So for example, if you're triggering between sites or between physical locations, if you need to have that trigger take place, that's what the SIM link is for. So I'll talk quickly about some of the readers. So we can see here just a couple of the readers we have here. So we have our KProx3, we have our KKPR, so our keypad proximity reader, and a KVAN. So that's our vandal resistant reader. It's very heavy duty.
Hey, Matt.
Yep.
Not to stop you, but I just wanted to give everyone the opportunity. If you guys have any questions, do you mind if they ask a couple questions regarding the controllers or the access control?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Guys, if y'all have any questions at the moment, please feel free to ask him. As that was quite a bit of information there. And, I wanted to give you an opportunity.
All right, so with our Keyscan 36-bit format, so the Keyscan 36-bit format, we have this on a few different technologies. So one of the things here is let's see here. It offers a little bit higher security over your standard 26-bit in that it's a unique bit structure. We track both the we track the manufacturing of the credential numbers. So this allows us to ensure that we don't generate any duplicate card numbers. So if you order a Keyscan 36-bit card number, you're guaranteed that that card number will not exist a second time within our format. That's one of the major issues with 26-bit is that so many people are producing it. It's just a standard format, and it has only supports so many facility codes or batch numbers and card numbers. So the highest batch number is 255. So you have from 0 to 255, and the highest card number is 65,535. There's a hexadecimal reason for that. Basically, that's the highest number that it can go up to within 26 bits. And so because there's only that limited range, the chance for duplicate, basically the industry can only support that being done so many times. And so there's already so many duplicates within the 26-bit format that are being done. So we always recommend going with something more secure. So Keyscan 36-bit is our proprietary card structure, and so that you're guaranteed with no duplicates there. There's other credential vendors that support other applications. So for example, HID has their corporate 1000 that allows you to basically own your own facility code or batch number, and then that entire range of cards is solely yours. So that's one of the neat things there. So I always recommend going with something a little bit more secure than 26-bit. So here's our K-Smart line. So we have our K-Smart 3 reader and KS-KPR keypad. They're actually identical to the Prox line as well. So we have a proximity-based line, which uses a K-Prox 3 and a K-KPR. So they're visually the same, but this one supports the 1356, so the smart card frequency. And this is using our K-Secure cards. And the nice thing as well, with the K-Smart 3, this is Bluetooth credential as well. We have our I-Class line, so that's coming from HID. So we have a few different models there, the KR15, KR40, KR10, and the KRK for the keypad, 40. And that's on the SE line. So that's kind of the HID standard I-Class technology, so their standard smart card technology. We've also introduced, I think this was 2018 that we launched the CIOS line. So this is actually HID's newer version of I-Class. So it's basically a little bit more secure. And so we have a specific set of readers that support that and the credentials there. So the R10SO, R40SO, and the RK40SO. And then the credential is the I8K CIOS. That's using, actually the difference there, the big difference actually, is that with the CIOS line, this is using a HID's standard key or public key, which actually makes it universal there. So it's not, one of the things about the I-Class SE is that it uses an elite key. So that means you can only use our I-Class SE credentials on our I-Class SE readers. They cannot be used across platform to other devices, and the readers will ignore non-elite key encoded credentials. So that makes it a very secure technology, right on line with our K-Secure series of credentials and readers. The CIOS is, we've went to open source in a sense with our CIOS line. So this one you can actually take our I8K CIOS cards or CIOS credentials. They're still programmed with Keyscan 36-bit, but you're no longer basically tied to using our readers and vice versa. So if you used our readers, you don't have to necessarily use our credentials. You could be using a 20-bit or you could be using a corporate 1000 as an example there on the appropriate technology. So it has to be a CIOS technology credential. It's not a multi-technology reader, but that kind of opens things up for more integrations if you had applications for that. As I mentioned, we have the Prox line, so we have our Prox 3, KKPR, which are, again, visually identical to the K-Secure line. So yeah, we do get a little bit of mix-up every once in a while on that. But if you're ever unsure what you have on site, the model number is on the back of those devices. And the K-Prox 3 and the K-Smart 3 are actually very easy to remove. There's just a little screw on the bottom that you can remove it from its cap, from its mounting plate rather. And the other nice thing about both of those readers is that they come with the mounting plate for both the mullion and wall switch, so that one reader can fit both applications. We've also got a couple of other readers and credentials through our Farpoint line. So we have a mullion keypad. This is a Prox reader only, so it has that integrated keypad, integrated reader on the keypad, but it is specifically for Prox technology only. The P710 and the P900, so longer range readers. So the 710 gets up to 15 inches, which compared to normal, which is only about 2 to 3 inches read range on the Prox, and up to 20 inches, that is significant range on a basic proximity technology read. So good for like parking applications. So yeah, that has a lot of uses there. A couple other things from HID. So we have our KU90 UHF. So this is an ultra high frequency reader. So this is actually using the 902 megahertz to the 928 megahertz frequency. So it's also kind of considered a smart card in a sensor, but it has a, because it's off that 125 kilohertz, it does have some security in there as well, but it has a passive card, so the KI UHF and the KI 4K there. With that passive credential, you can actually get up to 16 feet of read range, which is, for a passive credential, really amazing, because normally you would have to have an active transponder, so something that's got an integrated battery in it, to see anywhere near that kind of read range. So the fact that we can do that with this application is pretty unique. It is specific in that the reader only works with the ultra high frequency credentials. So we have those two part numbers there for that. Also for long range applications, we have the KRX receiver and KTX2 transmitters. This actually gets you a lot further, just because both are, again, active devices. So there's actually an integrated battery in the transponder, or sorry, transmitter in this case. You can actually get up to about 150-foot read range with this solution. So it's got an adjustable dial on the receiver to go down to about a foot, up to about 150 feet. The transmitters, they do have a couple of different versions. We have the KTX2, which has an integrated proximity chip. So you can use that both as a transmitter to work with the KRX, or you can use it as a prox-based credential at, for example, like a KProx3. There's also the KTX2 1K. So that is our smart card version to work with our K Smart 3 line of readers. So again, kind of like a dual technology credential. The transmitters do have 4 buttons, and the receiver has, it's a 4-channel receiver. So that actually allows you to have multiple applications based off of that one remote, and potentially one receiver, or it could be multiple receivers. So for example, if you have a receiver that's within range of 2 or 3 gates, you can have that one transmitter going to that one receiver, and depending on which gate you're at, you hit the appropriate button and it opens. So a lot of applications for that there. So that's the end of that PowerPoint there. I'm just going to go through a couple of slides on the Luna here. Again, I'm going to go into the software as well. So with the Luna, that is, it's our 1 to 6 door system. So it's, again, for more of like the entry level systems. Sorry, there's a few different applications that Luna fits in. So it's based off of our SDAC controller. So that's our single door access controller. And so basically, for each door up to the 6, you would need up to those 6 SDAC units. The Luna software is actually free, so there's you can actually download that off of our website, basically at any time. And then the controller, so if you wanted to just kind of download the software, have a look at it, you can actually absolutely do that at any time there. One of the interesting things, though, is that the SDAC is a Wi-Fi only, actually, controller. So it doesn't have an onboard Ethernet jack. It's strictly just Wi-Fi. But that allows you to basically either connect it into an existing Wi-Fi within a building, or you can connect to it via point-to-point communication. So if you have a laptop, you can install the Luna software on there. And then, for example, if you have 6 different locations you want to manage with just that controller, you can actually just drive up to those locations, pull out your laptop, connect to that, connect to the SDAC's Wi-Fi connection, and then upload any changes that you need to do. So there's a few different applications that you can do with that. So, or not just a few, there's lots of different applications that it can support there. So here's that link that I said you can go to download the Luna software. So it's just www.dormacaba.us/SDI-Luna. I believe that actually might be case sensitive as well. So the SDI is in capitals and the L is in capital as well, but everything else is lowercase. I think we had an issue with that before, so I just wanted to quickly mention that. So a couple of things here about the both Luna specifically, so on the software side. As I said, there's no purchase needed for the software. You can download that at any time. It specifically supports up to 1 to 6 doors. There's 15 user-definable access levels, 10 programmable schedules with up to 30 holiday events. So you can actually have up to 30 different override events for your schedules. Supports up to 10,000 cardholders. There's 10 optional fields, which you can actually label. So I'll show you in the software in a second there. They're kind of pre-set, but you can adjust the names on those. And you have standard reporting options as well in there. So you can see your transaction reports and system reports, so you can actually see when changes were made and things like that. However, it is just a single user interface. So basically, you're going to have that installed on one computer, and there's one user to log in to manage that. So it'd be a shared credential if multiple people are logging into that computer. So a couple of details on the controller itself, so the SDAC. So as I mentioned there, it has the onboard Wi-Fi adapter, so it can support a local Wi-Fi connection or a point-to-point connection, sometimes referred to as a peer-to-peer connection as well. Again, it uses the kind of standard Keyscan hardware, so it does have the integrated dual processors, supports flash memory, transaction buffer for up to 6,000 events, dual Wiegand reader ports, so it actually has 2 ports, so you can actually do in and out reader control, which is actually the same on our CA150. So that single door controller also does in and out traffic control. And it has of course, the dedicated inputs for door contact and exit devices. As this is a smaller scale system, it does support fewer credential technologies. So it only supports our Keyscan 36-bit format, including our mobile, which is also 36-bit style, standard 26-bit, and basically can read most others, at least in a decimal or hex style. So it doesn't necessarily read the true card numbers, but you can get something functional from those others. So just very quickly here, we do have a kit available for the SDAC. So that's the SDAC SKT, so Smart Kit basically. And that actually comes with the controller, of course, free download for the software. Comes with a K-Smart 3, a 10-pack of credentials, and the power supply, so the PS1225. Otherwise, you could always just purchase the controller and provide a local 12-volt power supply source. Of course, it uses the Wiegand connection there, so works with our K-Smart 3 or the K-Prox 3 if you're not buying the kit. Also the P620 there, so a couple of examples. And from our RCI portfolio, any of those which I believe those are all proximity based as well. But I do have some other design options on the readers there. And through our RCI channel, you can actually purchase 26-bit. As through the Keyscan portfolio, we don't have any 26-bit credentials there. So if you were using 26-bit credentials, for example, as a common card between your access control and like a time and attendance system, you could actually purchase those credentials and have it work on both of those systems. A couple of examples for hardware. So there's the RCI 6 Series Strike, which is actually really neat as they have a universal option. There's a low profile and a standard profile, but within those 2 ranges there, they have a universal option that comes with 3 different faceplates. So they're standard from number 4, number 8, and number 14 faceplates there. And based off of the power draw on those, it's quite low, so that can actually be powered through the SDAC. The maglocks tend to be a little bit higher end, especially for the multi-mag. I think your 8310 might be just within range, but the 8320 would be too much for the SDAC to provide power directly. So you would have to have a separate power supply for the 20. We have an example here for the 10-3, which I actually need to update that because the 10 series power supply has been discontinued. We now have the new DKPS, which is available in a 2 amp, 4 amp, and 6 amp. So I'll need to update that slide there. I think that was, yeah, that was it. Just going to share my desktop here. So one of the things that sometimes is, so you can actually see here on my desktop, I've got my Aurora screen, but over here under my system tray, this is where Luna minimizes to. So if you launched Luna and then you minimized it instead of closing it, it actually minimized down to here, which does get missed from time to time. So I always like to try and show that there. So here's the Luna software. So this is kind of basically your splash screen. I've already logged in, so it didn't prompt me to log in. Basically, there's kind of two spots for information. Down here, we have our status widget, which pulls up basically kind of like a little tray, which is kind of neat. And we have basically the 6 controllers already pre-configured in the software. So again, just like in Aurora, everything's pre-configured. That follows through in Luna as well. You can see I've only got one door actually figured. It is currently offline. I was hoping to show you guys, but I was having an issue with my controller there. So I can't actually really show you guys that one right now. And you can see that my other controllers are all currently set to disabled because they're not there. Yeah, so basically in here, we would have show us the status of the door. So if it was locked or unlocked, it would be actually the image of an icon. And when it gets unlocked, it switches from just a generic gray color to green to indicate that it's unlocked. And then over here, we would have a little icon to indicate if there's an alarm condition from that door contact. So within the management capacity here, so we have up in the top right, we've got the little 3 bars or hamburger icon. Some people call it that. We basically have the different tool sets for Luna. So we have the people. So I'll jump over there real quick. Automatically minimizes the status tray. And I can see here my credentials or my people within the database. So I've got a Bob Smith, I've got a Norman Reed, I've got a Susan Johnson. So a few different names in there. Each just happens to have a single credential. However, like Aurora, you can actually have multiple credentials associated with a single person. I had mentioned about the optional fields as well. So there's those 10 optional fields. Currently, I don't have anything in any of those. But you've noticed there that I've actually labeled those. In order to do that, you have to right-click and hit Edit, and then that gives you the ability to customize the names. This is common across all of the people, so it doesn't matter which person you're on when you change that name of the optional field, but that changes the label across all of the people when you're looking at that. So you can't have, for example, cell phone for one person, but then that's like the address under a different person. You'd have to have separate fields for that information. Yeah. We have temporary options, so you can actually have credentials automatically expire at specific dates, which is very helpful for those temporary permissions where you need that. So for example, if you're having a contractor go to a site, that credential, you can give them a card, like, hey, here's your card, happy to see you next week. Your credentials all set up, access level and everything. However, it will turn off at 4 o'clock. So if you need access after 4, we'll have to come back over to reception or something like that, and then we'll update the system for a longer period of time. So things like that. Very helpful with the temporary options. With the hardware, so as I mentioned, basically everything is already preset in regards to the doors. So if I go down to panel 2, all the information is already set for a basic kind of setup. It's just a matter of identifying the information. So putting in the unit serial number, putting in the IP address, maybe moving from the generic name on the controller and the door, and making sure that you have the correct door operation mode. Actually, I'm going to touch on that because even on Aurora, this is always one of those things that I always am very, I guess, adamant about, in making sure that you use the correct door operation mode. As if you don't set the correct operation mode, you're just going to generate a ton of alarms in the system, and you don't want to just fill up your system with needless alarm events. So out of the box, as you kind of noticed there on the other one that was undefined, our default operation mode is unlocks door and shuts door contact. This is applicable in Aurora and in Luna. This means we're expecting a valid entry signal, so for example, a card reader, to say, yes, this person is valid authorized to go in. But that also means we're expecting the same on the exit. That could be a motion sensor, that could be a push button, or that could be a card reader. However, most applications, I would say, almost, yeah, maybe most, but certainly a lot, don't have an exit device. So it's actually just a free egress. So you just turn the handle and leave. But it's that card access to come in. So you're securing the entry, but you're less concerned about the exit. If that's the case, I always recommend using free egress, as that then tells the system, don't worry about people leaving the door or leaving through the door. So don't automatically go into alarm when the door opens. Just use the door held open alarm. So it negates the door forced event, because technically nobody can, every time somebody's leaving, they're forcing the door to open. There's no valid authorization for that because it's not required. So I always touch on that to make sure that you specify the correct operation mode. With the Luna software, we have one of our actually kind of core functions, as I think of them, which is our present 3. So this is something that's kind of core to Keyscan. So this has been a function since our system 7 days as well. And we've carried that up to Aurora and into Luna, as we just kind of considered a key function. So with present 3, it's exactly what you kind of sounds like. You're presenting your card 3 times within a valid period. I think it's 15 seconds. And with that, we can then do a toggle. So that could just be a door toggle. So you present your card 3 times, the door is now unlocked. You want to lock the door, you present your card 3 times, it toggles the door back to lock. But we could also be doing schedule toggles. So if you present your card 3 times, that schedule is now active. Now, things can get quite complicated, but basically just means there's a lot of different things that we can do with the schedules. So that could be something like turning on and off access levels. So without the managers there, none of the general staff cards will work. Or we could be having that door, a door unlocked for a certain period of time based on that schedule. And we could be doing both, or a combination of different things there. So with the schedule toggles, we can be doing a lot of different things. Basically, the 2 options there is with or without card lockout. And what that means is that on a single valid card access, without, or single card read, without card lockout means that that person can get through that door just by presenting the card once. With card lockout means that unless you have the authority to initiate the present 3, you cannot open that door. So just to kind of illustrate that, we do that by specifying the group ranges. So as we said, there's 15 access levels or group access levels. And so you could have a specific range that one access level, so only someone with this access level, or you can have a multi-group range. And you can see there the schedules that would be affected. So I've only actually got 2 schedules set up here. Let's see here. So yeah, it's a nice, clean interface. So I'm going to jump into Aurora. And there's a little message saying it's minimized to the system tray. So we're going to log into Aurora real quick here. Just get rid of that. There we go. There we go. So on my Aurora software, I do, or I should actually have my controller online. So I'm just going to jump into my status real quick here. Oh, no, that's trying to open to a different window, different monitor. So let me reset that there. Just close out those guys. So with the, actually, where did you go? There it is. Perfect, this is on. So with the Aurora, there's of course a lot more going on than in Luna. So in here, I can see my online transactions, so things that are occurring live in my system. I do actually have a couple of controllers here. So I just see my schedule toggle on my 2 online controllers. And actually, if I jump over to my door status, so let's hit my 8500. I'll close that one. I can actually control my doors here and actually show you what that looks like. So my lock just went changed to the green color, and that little lock opened up, and it changed to an M, indicating it was manually changed. And you can actually see that transaction up at the top here: main lobby entrance, door unlocked, manual. I can revert that back to schedule if I've overridden the schedule. I didn't have one on there, so that just sets it back to a locked state. But for example, this one here, this is automatically unlocked because of a schedule. So if I double click that one, it changes again to an M because it was a manual change. But if I revert it back to schedule, it stays on the manual because there was a manual function to say, hey, I'm changing it back to putting it on the schedule. It does a little quick check to say, should you be unlocked? Yes. And then it unlocks that door. So it goes back to that state there. So a lot of different functions with the control. And those are also applicable actually on the Luna when you're interacting with the door device as well. So there's a lot of different functions there. The people management works kind of the same way, but there's a lot, again, just more things happening. So we can have photos. As I mentioned, there's the Aurora comes with photo badging. So we can actually, if I had a picture in there, I could use one of the card templates. Oh, hang on, probably that one's, there we go. So this one, as an example, it's pulling in information from the profile information, and we'll print that information off to a badge printer there. So again, just kind of more than what Luna had, so in every sense. So more details, so first name, last name, email field. So if I want to have that information, more access levels. So there's actually, 511 compared to the 15 in Luna. 250 schedules compared to the 10. So basically just offers more. Optional fields is another example. So with Luna, we supported 10 optional fields. In Aurora, there's actually no limit to the number of optional fields that you can set up in the system. By default, we have 16 put in there, which you can customize the name on. But you can add or take those out if you don't need that many. But yeah, there's, again, no restriction on there. General information, so if you just want to have some comments about the person. So this is, again, it's that large scale system. Actually, touching back on the optional fields, we actually have 2 categories for optional fields. Common, which is basically system-wide across the database, or site-specific. So if you have multiple sites, so if you're, for example, an integrator, and you have Aurora that you're managing for multiple customers, you could put in so that you can be tracking information about those customers. And then if the customers then have their own information, whereas you could be using common for information that you as the integrator are managing. Again, so a couple of other things: hardware management or site management, and the hardware setup. So in Luna, we had those 6 controllers that were pre-configured. In Aurora, we have the ability to add the specific controllers. So is it an 8, a 4, a 2, a 1 single door controller, or one of our elevator controllers? But we also have integrations with other devices. So Legion, we have an integration with for their NDE lock sets and their AD 400 series as well. We have integrations with Kone virtual elevators, so their destination dispatch, and Dyson Crump as well. Door groups, so we have integrations with ePlex, as well as Best's offline series of G and V series locks. And actually, with the base software, you have that integration with the Legion, the virtual elevators, and those different door groups. There's no extra licensing required for any of that. That's all just included in the base package. The intrusion devices, that is an extra license, and so is video devices. So you can actually see that down at the bottom there. I've got a number of different devices just added into my system for kind of testing purposes, which actually, maybe I'll show you guys that. I think the exact one should be working. So again, if we have the video integration added into the system, we can actually connect to some of our video partners. So let's see, it looks like it's working there. Perfect. Yeah, so our ExactVision, as an example, connects to the ExactVision client software as just one of our video integration partners there. And then from here, you can actually interact with the cameras from their system there. So this is actually connecting, changing applications. So this isn't embedded in Aurora. This is actually, Aurora is connecting over to their software to launch it, log into it with the pre-configured permissions, and then you can administer or manipulate that video as you need to. So if you want to pop up when there's a door forced open event, as an example, we can make that camera call and say, hey, we want to see the live video feed from this camera. Or if Monday morning you come into the office and the front door is all smashed in, you go, what happened? So you go into Aurora, you look at that event, so you see, oh, I see when the door forced event took place. You can literally and pop up the video integration and pull up the recorded timestamp from that period. Of course, that is dependent on the video partner having that, or video manager having that recorded video at that time. So if, for example, you're just keeping a day's worth and it was on the Saturday as opposed to Sunday, then you'll have lost that video recording. But that is, again, all managed by the video system, not within Aurora. We're just connecting over to it. So yeah, there's the active mapping. I'll show you guys that one real quick here as well. So with the active mapping, basically, you're importing an image of your floor plan and overlaying the actual devices to interact with on that map interface. So for example, your various doors, camera devices. So again, I can connect to show video from the map if I wanted to see it from that interface. And it's going to show me that specific camera. So my generic gives me the 4-camera view, but when I say, no, show me this camera, it gives me that camera view, the single camera view as well. So various options here, which is really good. And as well, you can even transition to different maps. So I have a little transition here to go to the engineering map, which I always have to scale out because it's a very long one. I've only got, I think, one device on there. Yeah, I've got the one device on this map. But for example, as well, I've got the site plan. There we go. So this one has like an exterior view of the system there. So I've got 2 doors, one at the warehouse, one at the front. and I've got a little transition there as well, so I can pop into the next level of the map. So there's a lot of different functions in Aurora here. So it's very, basically a very complex system, but it doesn't need to be complex. It's basically kind of, when you're setting things up, it's fairly step-by-step. Things are pre-populated in a sense. So when you're, for example, adding a new site, it would create a generic name for that site, and it's just a matter of customizing it. When you're adding your hardware, it's the same thing. Everything is preset. It's just a matter of customizing it. So giving those doors a true name to be referenced within the system, as opposed to just generically door number 1, unit number 1. So it's all well and good, but you generally want to make sure you're labeling things for easy identification. Yeah, there's so many different things that I can just go on and on about in Aurora here. So I think I'll actually just kind of open that up for questions.
I had a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so we have multiple sites here. I'm at a school district.
Okay.
The question is, if is it tiered in a way where we can control the main system here and then have users at each site control access to the actual user or to the actual people with key cards? To kind of have like a sub manager.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So, for example, if you're managing the kind of the system, like I said, at the school board level, I was going to say corporately, but I'm just like, well, not quite the same. Well, similar concept, I guess. But yeah. So, for example, if you're managing all of the hardware and schedules and things like that of the system, we support multiple user accounts within Aurora here. So you could say, yes, I'm an administrator for the whole system. So I have access to literally anywhere I want to go. Or maybe actually not. Maybe it's just I can set up hardware, I can set up schedules, but anything about people, I shouldn't be necessarily administering, because that's not within my wheelhouse. So I can take that function off. And whereas there's people who are at those various sites, yes, I need to be able to administer credentials and the access levels around those credentials, but I don't need to touch anything in the hardware. I may need to be able to toggle a door unlocked. Sure. Okay. So I need to be able to see the doors, but I don't need to see the other devices. Maybe I'll throw in an ePlex here as well. So I can interact with my doors, or I can see my doors. I can see my ePlex doors. Actually, that's ePlex operation. There's the ePlex doors. I think that falls into doors. Yep. And then to be able to toggle those devices. So I can arm and disarm and pulse. Maybe I don't even want to give them the ability to arm and disarm, because that gives them the ability to leave it in that state. I just want them to be able to pulse that door so they can momentarily unlock it, and it relocks automatically within a couple of seconds. So if that's the case, perfect. I've given them the ability to manage the people, manage the credentials, manage the access levels with it just by leaving that information there. But I've restricted what devices they can interact with and how they can interact with it. So things like that. So absolutely, it's very flexible. One of the limitations in that, though, is that these permissions are cross sites. So for example, you can't say that I can manage people in my Keyscan US site, but I can't manage people in the Keyscan Latin America site. When you have a set of permissions, that's the set of permissions. So if you need to restrict to say, yes, I can manage people in the Keyscan US, but in Latin America, I could do something else, you have to have a separate account for that.
I see.
Yep.
So they have to be all the same permission for each site.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, so does it require a license for each site?
Actually, I was just going to mention this. There's no extra licensing required for multiple users. So you can have as many sites as you want and as many user accounts as you want for the software. There's no restrictions there. The only restriction that comes into place is the number of active clients that can be connected to the database. So for example, if you're managing from the main office there, and you have 3 sites, each with their own administrator, that in theory could need 4 connections. Out of the box, Aurora only allows 2 simultaneous connections. So you would need 2 additional client licenses to make sure that all of the administrators could be on at the same time.
I see. So we have 32 sites, so I would actually need 32 licenses.
In theory. So on the off chance that everybody could be logged into the system at the same time, I would suggest it. But if that's unlikely, because generally the administrators just log in if they need to make a change, as opposed to actively monitoring their local site, then maybe you can get by with 15. And we do sell those licenses in packs as well. So we have the individual license, a 5-pack, and a 10-pack as well. So your best value is generally on the 10-pack.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
For sure, not a problem.
So I don't know if you touched on this or not, Matt, but once a person buys the licensing, is there an annual fee that they have to pay to re-up?
I did mention that very early on, but all of the licensing is a one-time purchase. So with Aurora, with the basic package there, or with any of the add-on modules, you're buying that once, and you have it for life. So if you purchase Aurora, you need to worry about paying like annual fees or licenses expiring or anything like that. You've got the software, and you're set. If you want to add on a package, you can do that at any time. You're not locked in to say, oh, you didn't purchase that as part of the base package, so you can't add that on later on. You don't have to worry about that. You can always add on those modules at any time that you want. And again, there's no recurring fees in relation to that.
Awesome, thank you.
For sure.
Do you guys have any other questions for Matt? So I think it should be noted, one of the most important things that I see with Aurora and Luna is that Keyscan is flexible from the enterprise level of access control. You're really complicated and intricate access control, all the way down to the most simple access control, which is a single door unit. It's flexible, it's easy, and it's affordable. And so allow Keyscan, RCI, Dormicaba, aid you in providing access control to your customers at an easy, flexible, and affordable price. And the licensing fees, the user fees, and things like that, they're all a one-time purchase, and it's an affordable purchase. And your customers, your end users, they have it for life, and you have the ability to then work on other things such as hardware, other points of access control, video, things like that, to be able to provide to your customer and not have them worry about, well, we're going to buy this, but it's going to be a fee next year and things like that. It's more of a selling feature than anything, I think. So I just wanted to touch on that. And Matt, do you have any other things that you're going to go through, or was that the end of the presentation?
Yeah, I mean, I could go on for hours of different things in Aurora here. So I think I'll kind of leave it there, but we do also just kind of let everybody know, we have basically bi-weekly webinars that we do on kind of Aurora and touching on Luna. I think we usually do one on Luna every few weeks. I think it's once a month usually, but check out our webinars on our website. We do have basically every Thursday at 11 Eastern, we do a webinar on Aurora. So that could be something like people management. So managing access levels, managing the credentials, different things like that. We do one on site setup, so the actual going through of adding hardware, different things around that. We do one on advanced features, so really diving in on Present 3, things like that. So there's lots of webinars that I recommend checking out. And if you have applications that you're curious on, check out those webinars and ask questions, because we'd love to have questions when we're doing those, because so often it's just very quiet. So I do recommend checking those out, because if it's not myself that's doing those, it's usually my counterpart, Adam Rushton, who's also at the office up in Canada, so at Whitby, at our Whitby Keyscan office. So yeah, highly recommend checking those out. And you can check those out from our website, so you can actually see the full list of webinars. So we've got not just webinars on Keyscan, Aurora, and Luna. We do stuff for RCI. There's best webinars, and you can see who's doing the presentation. So the best stuff isn't myself or Adam. There's other individuals that do those. But absolutely, I recommend checking those out. Definitely worth the time.
For sure. So to touch on what Matt just said, I posted links in the chat window below. So click on the chat. You can see the links. You can click on those and interact with them. I post some action items that I did. Is I posted a link to the free software download. I posted a link to the training webinars. So from there, you can see what classes are available currently, what classes are available tomorrow, and even what classes are available throughout the year. I know that we're coming close to the end of the year, but there are going to be classes listed throughout December and even into next year. You can see classes from both the electronic side and the mechanical side, so utilize those. Another resource is obviously going to be every Tuesday, where we do a Training Tuesday class. Our next one is going to be in November. But use all the resources that we have for you. I think a lot of it is essential, and it'll help you from identifying openings all the way up to controlling those openings electronically via access control. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the meeting. I appreciate everyone joining into the Training Tuesday. Like I said at the beginning of the meeting and also in the middle, if you have any questions, comments, or if there's anything that I can help with, please reach out to me, and make sure that you send me an email, send me a comment, log into our YouTube page, send me something on LinkedIn, connect to me any way that you can, so that way I know that you are helped and we are assisting you. If you need help with specifications, if you need help with a site survey, or if you even need help with an existing access control problem that you have, reach out to me so I can help provide a solution. I appreciate you guys joining our Training Tuesday class. We did go over a little bit, but there was a lot of information to cover. So I'll see you guys next time. Have a good rest of your day, and have a good week.